Welcome to the fourth Unite Palm Desert podcast. My name is Lori Carney, and I'm joined today by VonHelf from the city's Information Technology Division. How are you today, Clayton VonHelf?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm so glad to hear it. In this interview, we're going to talk about a couple of things that are both together and separate, but part of the broad IT world. The first one is GIS and our partnership with Esri. So I know it's one of your favorites. I know it's a dear topic for you. So a lot of people hear GIS. We hear it bandied about the city, and it stands for Geographic Information Systems. But we've talked about how that's not really a good descriptor of what GIS is.
Right.
Would you like to expand on it a little bit?
Sure.
Great.
So a lot of times people think of GIS as just a map, or how to get from point A to point B.
Right.
But really what GIS is in its fullest sense is just anything that's data with its location attached to it. So that could be your credit card spending habits, what stores you go to. Those are location there. It could be your capital improvement projects for the city. It could be any piece of data. GIS is adding that location part to that data and then being able to both visualize it and analyze it spatially so that you can see trends, you can see hotspots, you can see a lot of data that just by looking at a spreadsheet you'd never be able to pull out and recognize.
We're visual creatures,
right?
And we're used to looking at pictures. And so what the GIS system allows us to do is to take that spreadsheet and turn it into a picture.
Right.
And examples that we've used in the past have been call data for ambulances that we then saw on a heat map. We've seen heat maps of sales tax revenue generated in the city. One of the things that we talked about before is that we have the Survey 123 tool, and I know our planning department used that pre-pandemic to survey people about crosswalks on El Paseo, and they were able to see where people felt better about it and where people had less positive feelings.
Yeah.
So that was another unusual and interesting use of the GIS system to do something that's not necessarily map-based.
Right.
So one of the things that we were talking about earlier was that GIS isn't directions to get you from A to B. It's the information you need to decide, do you want to go to B?
Right.
So when we have GIS, that's kind of the bigger overarching thing, but here in the city of Palm Desert, we have a partnership with a particular company, which is Esri. I'm sure lots of our staff members have heard the term Esri, but they may not be aware of everything we get with our partnership with Esri. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that platform can help our departments to make better decisions and also provide better information to stakeholders and residents?
Sure, yeah. So the Esri platform has a huge toolbox, tons of tools that we can use. They like to categorize everything into their common patterns of use. And so that's how they break their tool set down. So that is data management, mapping, field mobility, monitoring, analytics, design and planning, decision support, constituent engagement, and sharing and collaboration. And so that's kind of the overall global picture of all of the tools all of the spots that Esri fills. One of their big pushes over the last, probably decade, has been to really simplify the GIS tools. So while you've had the ability to do some in-depth analysis or, create some very wonderful maps. In the past, it was always a Unix standalone workstation, and it took
nerdy.
Yeah, really nerdy. Took a lot of compute power to generate that. They've really been pushing a lot, moving all of the tools up to the cloud, and making the user interface just super simple, so that anybody, GIS nerd or not, can get in, can use the tool and create some wonderful analysis or create some simple web app to share to residents. They can create any kind of tool that they need to help tell a story or collect data.
Exactly. So one of the things that that we did with the business analyst tool is that already built in there is a lot of the information on demographics and ages, home prices, incomes, because all that stuff is collected in the census. It's all public information. Esri gives some built-in tools to help you slice and dice that in a lot of different ways pretty easily. Even I could do it. Some of us may have seen the CVEP newsletter. The CVEP newsletter always contains like an infographic, and if you look down at the bottom of that infographic, it'll say provided by tools from Esri Business Analysts.
Right.
So we have those same tools, and we have the ability to get training on how to use them and kind of just fiddle around with them. They're not as intimidating as they seem when you see the end product, right? They keep making it simpler and simpler. So, do you have any examples of different things that city departments could be doing today to use some of these benefits to their advantage?
Yeah, I'd like to show an example. Here, this is a urban platform. So this is one of the new Esri tools that we're rolling out, and this allows you to visualize different scenarios for design and development. What's great about this is you can put in all kinds of different scenarios. They all become different layers, so you click on and off the different layers, and you'll see the what it'll look like. You can post it out to the public, have citizens vote and comment on the different plans. There's even a sun shadow indicator, so you can see where the shadows will fall, and that could be important for solar, or for if you had a protected area that you don't want a lot of shadows on from tall buildings. One of our big issues, especially in the downtown corridor, is the view of the mountains. And so as we look at increasing building height, what will that do for neighboring residences or businesses in their view of the mountains? And using this tool, we can actually see what that will look like ahead of time before any ground is broken.
Exactly. It's a great way to model and plan and protect the things that are important to the citizens of Palm Desert, which are those view corridors, right? No more standing up story poles or floating balloons or hanging sheets from ladder trucks to try and get some kind of idea of what something is going to look like, because those were the only tools available to us.
Right.
But with this 3D computer modeling, people can forecast what it might look like. And I think you and I saw a presentation on a community that was using this to plan a revitalization of their downtown core, where they actually did different site plans and put those out to the community, and the community was able to interact with those and vote on different aspects of them. This is a great place where the GIS and Esri tools connect to the Engage Palm Desert and Bang the Table tools, and that's where the magic's going to happen, right? That's where our public is going to, feel like they're sitting right at the table with us, and decisions are going to be made that benefit the public in a way that they understand.
And I remember that that particular one, because there were a lot of residents that made comments about we need more bike parking here, or and their ideas were really good. Because they're living there, they know what they need.
It's their community.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So that's just one example of the many ways that departments can use this tool, not just to create a map or a visual interpretation, but to take it to the next step, to analysis and engagement with the public. That's our next milestone. So would you say that the GIS and the visualization of data is becoming more essential to the function of local government?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's absolutely. Not only is it almost expected, both from our constituents and from our council members.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just critical. I mean, everything has a location, and if we're not taking that location into consideration for our decision making, we're really blind to a huge chunk of data.
Exactly, and a different way of thinking about how decisions are going to impact the communities around them.
Right.
Right.
Like your example, I know when we went to the CIO conference a few years ago with the Waze
Yes.
data, right? So I don't remember which city it was, but they were taking the Waze data from Waze
Right.
and overlaying that with their CIP projects and making sure that where Waze was reporting problems or traffic or issues,
Right.
making sure that they were addressing it with the CIP budget.
That really had a big impact on me too. I'm glad you remembered that as well, because it's like we may, in our wisdom, see that, oh, we'll make an investment on this corner, but when we look at the actual traffic data, oh wait, the people are backed up here, there's potholes here, something's going on here. Maybe we can realign our expenditures to take care of where the problem areas are and deprioritize this project accordingly. It also helps people to understand where their tax dollars are being spent.
Right.
Right? Because they then will see that their tax dollars are being spent all over their community working on projects that they may not be aware of.
Right.
So, is there one thing that you would like to see the city take advantage of this year
Within the GIS.
within the GIS?
Yeah, our big goal. We're labeling it the year of GIS.
Yes.
So our big goal is to really lean in, and have staff be the GIS users across all departments, so that our current GIS department of John Yurkoff
Right, of one person.
would not be making maps for anybody.
Right.
That if anybody needs a map for a staff report, if they need a map for whatever, that they would have the tools and the training and the ability to go in and make it for themselves,
Right.
share it with the public, put it in their staff report, and use it. So,
Exactly. And then some people might say, well, if I'm doing this, what's John doing? But there's a lot of the back of house work that is also happening in IT, which involves the collection of data from the county and other agencies. Could you talk just briefly about that transfer of data from the county?
Yeah, so that's one of the spots that we do. We do get all of the parcel data from the county that gets massaged and
Right.
imported into our on-prem geo database, but also all of the other data layers. So whether it's district voting or whether it's catch basins or some other asset that we have a geolocation for, John is keeping track of and monitoring that geo database. And then he's also taking portions of that geo database and pushing them up to the online portion so that we could then consume them with our tools.
Okay.
So, if
Right.
like Anthony needs to do some work on district voting, John can create that layer just for that, push it up to the online portion,
Right.
and now it's available for him to use in his maps.
Exactly. Or in other presentations that he might want to do, in some surveys.
Right.
Perhaps he wants to survey, in the different district areas, collect information. He spoke to us previously on our last podcast about his desire to connect more with the community and get out in the community more, and having those sorts of visual representations, survey tools, those sorts of things. That's going to help him in that job. Again, that great blending of this GIS tool with the engagement with our Palm Desert citizenry. So let's switch gears a little, Clay, to something less fun but even more prescient, which is cybersecurity. I don't know if many of our listeners or viewers have heard about the many, many attacks on cities and public entities, including water districts and utility services, that have been happening in the last couple of years and are increasing. A couple of examples you might give the folks at home?
Yeah, certainly. So just recently, there's, I think this last year, there was over a dozen cities just within the JPIA, our insurance company. What do you call it? Insurance?
It's the Joint Powers Insurance Authority.
Okay, our insurance authority,
Yes,
our insurance
yes.
provider for the city. So I think just within the JPIA cities, there were over a dozen cyber activities, cyber crime activities, where there was a loss of data, where there was a need to use the cyber insurance.
Right.
So that's just California and just the customers of the JPIA within California.
Right.
So it is a huge, widespread problem.
Right.
And we're seeing it really tick up. A lot of the cyber criminals have links to some of the countries, China and Russia particularly. And as we saw the Ukraine activity step up, there was a huge uptick in the cyber criminal activity as well. Once the sanctions were imposed, a lot of these cyber criminals are making money now using cyber crime as
Right.
their main source of income.
Right.
And a lot of it is state sponsored, so you're seeing a lot of that activity. I saw a report that said in 2021 there was the total amount of cyber crime accounted for $6 trillion.
Wow.
So if that was a country, that would be the third largest country, behind US and China as far as economic power. So it is a huge engine.
It's a lot of money. I think sometimes when we hear cyber attack or cyber crime, we think of data breaches, right? We think about the notification that we may have gotten from some store that we went to that they had lost our data, or maybe our health insurance company or something like that has had our data stolen from us. But there's another, which is significant and something the city has to be concerned with, because we do house the private, personally identifiable data of not just all of our staff, but many, many, many applicants, permit holders, business license holders, loan holders. There's a lot of personal information that the city is now responsible for that you have to keep safe. But one of the things I think that maybe we think about less often is what a ransomware attack looks like on a city or a public agency. Have you heard of any of those that have happened recently?
Yeah, so I don't know firsthand information, but we've seen the reports from them.
Right.
And usually what will happen is the ransomware will get into a computer, single computer. The average incubation time before it actually launches its attack can be up to 100 days. And during that time, what that virus or code is doing is trying to go horizontal, they call it.
Right.
So it's moving itself across the network, trying to attach itself to as many different devices as possible. One of the things that they'll look for is your backup system.
Okay.
So they will attach themselves to the backup system. Most backup systems have a period of time that they're good for, and then your backups get deleted automatically. So one of the tricks that the ransomware will do is change the date on your backup appliance so that it voids out all of your old backups.
Oh.
They're all deleted, and only the backups with ransomware are kept.
Right.
Things like that. They're really amazing pieces of code. And they will spread and spread and spread undetected until they're ready to launch their attack. And then it's just a complete lockdown of all of the data.
A denial of service.
Right.
Right? So if the city of Palm Desert were to be a victim of a ransomware attack, and we certainly know it's happened in a number of cities across the country and even in California, employees would come in and they may not be able to use their computers at all.
Right.
For anything.
For anything, yeah.
Right.
It's encryption of your hard drives.
Right.
So it encrypts not only your local desktop hard drive, but all of the server hard drives. So everything is just basically shut down.
Right. So that would mean that we wouldn't be able to process any of the transactions that are processed in any department, or even communicate with each other in the ways that we are used to doing. So it can be a serious impact on the operations of a city, which is why we've seen that some people pay.
Yeah. It's either pay or recreate everything from scratch.
Exactly, which would be very difficult.
It'd be very difficult.
In our modern time. We don't have ledger books underneath our desk. We're like, oh, okay, here we go. I'll just recreate all those transactions from the last 6 months. It would be a very difficult thing to do. And so I think that's why you and your team work so hard to create systems to protect to protect our systems, which includes passwords and that sort of thing. Can you talk about maybe talk a little bit about what are the leading weak spots for attacks into systems and what employees can do to help be the first line of defense of our technical infrastructure?
Sure. So the biggest weakness in any computer system is the user. That's always your weakest point. And so just be extra vigilant when it comes to emails, when it comes to clicking on links, when it comes to visiting websites. The amount of damage that can be done by just one wrong click is amazing. So we have a lot of in-depth security, many layers of security. But really at the end of the day, if an employee really pushes and tries to click on something bad, it can still damage. So that's our biggest weakness, and that's our that's where we address a lot of our time and energy and training. The know before phishing emails that everyone gets annoyed with. That's why they're there, is because that's still our biggest threat, biggest attack vector.
Right, and some of those emails can look really, really authentic. It takes a second to say, oh, wait a minute, this suffix of this email address is just not quite right. I remember pre-pandemic when our city manager, Lori was vacationing in Europe. And our finance director, Janet Moore, people remember Janet, received an email that looked like it came from Lori, asking her to wire funds. The thing we were talking about, wire the money. We did, as we always do, have lots of things going on at the city, so there could have been a wire that needed to happen, and it was really Janet taking that extra 5 minutes to say, is this exactly right? Is this tone sound like her? And then sort of giving that email address just another look. And I remember in that particular case, it was taking another channel to verify that information. Well, I'm not going to reply to this email. I think I'll text Lori and find out, is this legitimate, right? If you have another avenue, try and take that other avenue. Another thing that people open the door with is password sharing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the city of Fresno just recently lost, I think it was 400,000. And what we've seen cyber criminals do now is they're watching the city council meetings and seeing what items are up for approval. So City of Fresno approved a construction project with XYZ contractor. And they got an email the next day to the finance department with an invoice from XYZ contractor. Here, pay this so we can start work on this project. Here's the project number. Here's the contract number. They had all the information from the council meeting. And the city paid that, made 2 payments, and it was to a cyber criminal. So, yeah.
Who is now enjoying a wonderful vacation in the Cayman Islands. Right. So that is one of the things that, it's a constant battle, right? We really are on the front lines, of a battle against people who intend to do harm.
Yeah.
And as I said on our previous podcast, we were talking with Anthony, the city clerk, and his desire and the city's desire to create more transparency, right? So it's a constant balancing act because we want to share all this information with the public, and yet at the same time, we have to be vigilant to make sure that bad actors aren't using that information for their own purposes.
Yeah.
Which could be monetary, or it could be just to cause havoc.
Right.
Because we've seen that happen in some cities as well, where there have been people who have just wanted to cause a disruption. So we've been pretty fortunate in Palm Desert because we have a great team working to protect us every day. So I think that's all that we had to talk about with our two small areas of the wide portfolio that is information technology systems for the city of Palm Desert. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with the folks watching at their desks?
Well, I would just like to thank our team, Ray Santos, Troy Koulis, John Yurkoff, and Nick Martin. They are an incredible team, and they do a great job, and so we couldn't do it without them.
Always at your service. Thank you very much. Have a great day, Clay.
You too.
Thanks.